Hey, now here is an antipasto that's really a great alternative to salad. It's a pizza.
Much better.
And I know you've had your share of pizzas, but have you ever had a prosciutto, pine nut, and arugula pizza?
I have, but not made by you.
Okay, now you can do this, and you can do this too, because right here in this bowl, we have pizza dough. And we did not make it, right? I went to the grocery store because I said the mayor is a busy man. He is not going to want to make pizza from scratch. So there are some good commercially made doughs. Now if you just, and I know this one is good because I can smell it. It's very yeasty. Isn't it good? And we've got enough dough here to make 4 pizzas. But because you have such a tiny oven, we're going to do this on half sheets.
Okay.
So we're going to make small pizzas. So what we need to do is line those sheets with some parchment paper, because if you haven't had parchment paper in your kitchen, this is your next best friend.
Okay.
Parchment paper keeps everything from sticking. So I'm just going to eyeball how much dough we need for that particular one. I'm going to take a small amount of this, and we're going to roll this out. So I'm going to set this aside.
And are we doing 2 of these or 1?
We're going to do, well, we're going to make 2, but let's make 1 at a time. So here's our dough. Now you can see how nice and stretchy that is. Why don't you just go ahead and feel that? Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
We don't really need to add a lot of flour. So we're just going to add a little bit of flour on the board, just enough to keep that from sticking. And now we can play with this. And you could either just stretch it out eventually with your hands to the size that you want it, or you can just roll it out with a rolling pin. You want to make sure that the dough is relaxed enough so that it doesn't spring back. And if you get a hole, you just patch it. So now we have our dough. We can stretch it out. And as this dough sits here, it's just going to relax that much more. So eventually, if we came back 5 minutes later, we could stretch this right to the edge of this. Okay. But this is good. Okay, so now we have that. So now we want to get our topping. So for that, we're using Prosciutto di Parma. And you have some right there.
Right here.
And now the trick to this is when you go to the store and you buy Prosciutto di Parma, you want to make sure you're getting the real thing.
Thin.
Very thin, and it should say Prosciutto di Parma. It'll have the ducal crown on the ham. It's traditionally sliced very thin. Now you want to overlap the slices a bit.
The same way, or?
Yeah, the same way. Overlap the slices.
Okay.
This is a really different type of pizza because besides the Prosciutto di Parma, we're going to be putting some cheese with this. And again, I like a nice melting cheese with this. Maybe a mozzarella cheese, or you could use a caciocavallo, you could use a fontina cheese. Any of those would be wonderful. That's looking really good. And you see this nice white line of fat is really important.
So where all the flavor is.
That's where all the flavor is, and it's really going to give flavor to the dough as well. A lot of people don't think to use prosciutto like this. All right, so now we want the cheese.
And there are 2 ways you can buy the cheese?
Right, several ways. We're using mozzarella, and here we have fresh mozzarella in water. You could buy it like this, so let's get one of those balls out. Those usually weigh between 4 or 5 ounces. So you just cut it up into small...
And how thick or thin?
Just shred it up into little pieces. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can even cut those in half. Okay. So if you don't want to buy it in water like that, you can buy it like this. See, packaged like this. And if we were doing this in Italy, we'd be using a buffalo mozzarella, which is, you've had it.
Yes.
It's much richer in flavor, and of course it's made from buffalo milk as opposed to being made from cow's milk. So now we just put this on the top, and I'm going to get a little bit of olive oil for this, and we're going to bake this pizza at about 375 degrees for about 20-25 minutes or so. And about 5 minutes before this pizza is ready, David, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to put some pine nuts. We're going to sprinkle some pine nuts over the top and put it back in the oven for about 5 minutes, just to get those pine nuts a little bit brown. And then, before we serve it, we're going to top it with some shredded arugula, which has a really nice peppery flavor. Your guests
also
are really
give it a beautiful presentation.
A pretty color, and your guests are going to love it because they're going to think, wow, I've only had pizza with tomato sauce.
Right.
Okay, so a little bit of olive oil goes over the top. Our oven is on at 375 degrees. How fast is that? That's ready to go. So that you can take over to the oven.